Hello, sir.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm okay. Matthew Perry's dead.
He is.
Maya told me when we were at a game, she had just found out and she started crying. And I'm like, how do you even know Matthew Perry? I was thinking Jason Priestley. Actually, first I thought Luke Perry, but then I thought Luke Perry in my head. It was Jason Priestley. I'm like, sad, but
And
and
then
then
you,
when I realized Matthew Perry, when it sunk in, actually, the
yeah, and then
real.
the surprise you experienced when I explained to you that Luke Perry did die a few years ago too.
And then I was like, what?
Yeah,
Is Jason Priestley dead?
no, he's killing. He's fine. He's good.
Okay.
He's good. He's doing low budget C grade.
I don't know why I got them all mixed up, but it's very, very sad. But
It
that's
is.
okay. So I have another guest today.
In a long list of guests you brought to the table.
I know you got to bring. I'm very excited for the day that you actually bring somebody.
It'll be just be someone like Darren. Like I'll just do a pity invite and he'll be on there and it'll be a gong show.
It will be a gong show. Might be interesting, but I don't know. So my guest is Kathryne Imabayashi, who's living in Japan,
Great
which is
backstory.
very exciting.
Great backstory.
Yeah. Within 3 months, moved to Japan after reading a book, had never been, just went. She had the urge, which was great. We're going to have a great conversation today. I'm looking forward to it. She is really, we're going to be talking about boys and the boy code. She's guiding children and their parents as they make sense of the world. It's really been her lifetime mission with an intense focus and passion to help raise our boys better. She spent almost 3 decades researching the dichotomy between what our boys are and what society often tells them they are. She works with busy parents raising their sons to become remarkable men and educators to recognize the challenges boys face in our current educational system. So I'm very excited to have Kathryn here to talk about boys and guiding boys into becoming kind, caring, compassionate men. Enjoy. Well, Kathryn, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's wonderful having you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
So why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a retired educator. I was in education for about 40 years, mostly early years and elementary, but some years in middle school, high school, and college level. I've been living in, I guess, 6 different countries since I left Canada. So I've now lived outside of Canada longer than I lived inside. When our son was 3, there was a particular experience that I had that started this whole mission to understand and then support the emotional world of boys. And it was an eye-opener and continues to be. So since I've retired, I have gone full-fledged into trying to share with parents and educators what I've learned in almost 3 decades of trying to figure things out, and just support parents on that journey, because it's one of those things, like many things, when you don't know what you don't know, you can't do anything about it. So that's basically what it boils down to.
Well, I was very excited. I was talking to Andy before the show, just how excited I was, raising 2 girls. We don't actually talk a lot about this. And I know that there's quite a few things that you wanted to share today, just around gender bias and differences and the boy code. So let's jump in. What have you learned? What do parents need to know?
The very first thing, and it's the thing that that triggered it for me, that started it for me, and I think it will for everybody. It's recognizing your own gender biases, and they are so deeply rooted that I would say the majority of people never bring them into any kind of a focus. So without that perspective, we continue to perpetuate the problems in society for our boys. So what happened when our son was 3 was that I had taken him out for a little fishing trip in a creek just down the road. It was in Japan. I knew it was safe. My husband was working. This little guy wanted to go fishing. So off we went. Beautiful day, not too far off the road, but a little bit secluded. And when we were there for a little while, I looked up to the path and I saw this, what in my mind immediately was this gang of young boys coming down. And there was something that happened that was so guttural and instinctive that it was like total and absolute fear. Like they might hurt us. How am I going to protect my son? How am I going to protect myself? And then these boys come walking down. And the ironic thing was that at that time, I was working in upper elementary. So I was very aware of these growth spurts that these boys have, especially, like when they're 10, 11, 12. And more than maybe somebody else, I should have known, because I understand there are these bigger bodies with these tiny little boys inside of them. And still, I didn't. And the boys came down. We all talked. We had a great afternoon together. It was beautiful. There was nothing to it. And that could have been it. And then I'm sure my life would have gone in a completely different direction, but it wasn't. And I'm very analytical and I never let anything go. So that night, it just bothered me terribly that I had reacted that way. And, I'm an educator. I'm well aware of stereotypes. I'm very conscientious about, in my classroom and then raising this little boy, not to impose stereotypes, in our world. And yet something happened that it was just kind of a throwback. So that's kind of where things took off from. And it was like, if I reacted that way, then maybe most people react that way. And then I had this thought, and that was the thought. It was like, okay, so what's going to happen in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years when my little boy is walking down a path with his buddies to go fishing, or he's walking down a sidewalk and there's a woman on the other side of the street? Is she going to feel that same fear simply because he's a boy, he's a male? And there was something just so wrong with that. Like, where'd that come from? So that's how it all started. It's like, this isn't fair. There's something really wrong with this. And what is it doing to our little boys who grow up into being men? So that's how it started.
Well, you've had that experience, people crossing the street, but he kind of looks like a thug as well. So,
but it is true, right?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, no, when you said he looks like a thug, I thought, well, where'd that come from?
I was a self-proclaimed. I had a hat on low. I had a hoodie like this. It was dark.
He's 6'6". I
didn't do a lot to really lighten my presence. That's for sure. But it's not an isolated incident. Like I've at times, actually, we were just talking to a very close friend the other day, and one of the things she's shared with me, she's like, "Did I ever tell you about what I thought of you when I met you?" And I'm like, no. And I knew what she was going to say because I've heard it a million times before, which was, I was terrified of you, right? You look big, you look imposing, you look this. And I don't consider myself to be those things. I've definitely played the part in certain situations, right? And it's typically more of the protector, the assumed protector role, right? Like something's happening to the girls, or I think something's going to happen, then I put that on. But it's amazing to me, even at this stage, that, yeah, there are perceptions about me. No matter what I do, I could be sitting having a coffee and someone sees and does it. And so, yeah, I get exactly that.
Well, even when you were a kid, he was so tall, people assumed and would get mad that he didn't play basketball or football.
Didn't play football or yeah, it's interesting. People's own perceptions definitely played a role in it, and to a certain degree have shaped a lot of who I am today, right? Like, as a bigger guy. This isn't necessarily gender specific, but I guess it plays into it because I'm a guy. But there's how I behave in public or in professional situations has most definitely been shaped by the fact that people interpret my behavior differently than someone else's based purely on my appearance, right? As a big guy, if I act animated in a way that I don't think is as animated as I see most people acting, very quickly people are like, hey, calm down, relax, don't get upset. I'm like, I'm not upset, I'm simply animated. But people's interpretation, because of who I am and the presence that I bring, is this whoa, like back up, you need to relax. And it's like, no, that's not it at all, right? So it's interesting. I definitely get that kind of preconceived bit for sure.
There was one of the first books that I read that is kind of like a Bible for me. It's by Dr. William Pollock, and he works. He's got a men's institute and has done all kinds of studies on gender connected with men mostly. And he wrote a book called Real Boys, and that's where the term boy code first came from. And he interviewed, there's one of his books based on that book are the interviews that he did with all of the males from middle to just below middle teenage years through to young adult men. And listening, and it's called Real Boys' Voices, and listening to the stories of the conflict between what society was saying, this is how you should behave because you're male, and the feeling that they had inside. There was such a conflict between those two things. And when they had the opportunity to talk about things, they were able to be vulnerable, but it just showed how, the opposite of free they are to be able to express a wide range of emotions. So what happens is that you start from such a young age, from birth. So there's quite a few studies that are done on the difference on how little girl babies and little boy babies are treated, whether it's when they're still in the hospital or when they come home or when they're wherever they are. And it's an unconscious how it happens, but it's happening. So you have a little guy who starts to grow up, and I mean, I actually have, in my own experience, have found little boys, the younger they are, they're just pure and gentle and vulnerable, and they have this wide range of emotions. It's there. And what seems to happen as time goes on is they learn very quickly, and usually it's the first people who are intimately involved with him. So first of all, it's usually the mom, which is why I address moms more than any other group. But it's the family that is letting him know, if you fall down, you don't cry. Very young age, they will get that message. She's a girl. You never hit a girl. You can hit the boy, stand up for yourself, but you never hit the girl. So this little guy begins to have to adjust how he behaves so that he's accepted by the people who mean the most to him. And all the time he is pushing down what's really deeply inside. So they start, Pollock refers to it as putting on these masks. And what happens is that as these males grow and they put on more and more masks to be acceptable in society, they can start to lose touch with who really is inside there. And so there's this, it's kind of like it's just so wrong. And it doesn't need to be that way. But sorry, if I start to go on a rant, just tell me and I'll stop.
No, this is great.
No,
this
it's
is
good.
great.
It's good. Yeah.
The thing of it is like, I'm a baby boomer. So I grew up reading all these self-help books, like, the Cinderella complex and the Peter Pan syndrome. And it was all about empowering women. And I believed I could do anything. And at the time, the term was male chauvinist pigs. That's how we referred to, the arrogant male who didn't recognize our female women power kind of thing going on. Now we call them toxic males, but it's basically the same thing. So from the 60s until now, women have been empowered. And even though there's not gender equality, that's not there yet. But as women, our place in society has radically changed. For boys, not so. So I'm not really good with facts and figures if I don't have them in front of me. And there are a lot of really wonderful people that can spit that out. But what I understand from the current data is that, like, for university enrollment, it used to be that there was more males than females because up until around the mid-70s. And then some ruling got changed or whatever. And there was an emphasis put on encouraging females to be able to join into higher education and become just stronger, independent women who could pursue whatever their dreams and goals were. And so there has been an emphasis on helping us as women to, improve our status in society. At the same time, so we've also changed how we're thinking about men. Like, we don't want the male chauvinists anymore. We want them to be gentle and share their feelings and share the weight in the house. But then we're not doing anything to support that being acceptable. We say we want that stuff, but we look, a little funny when the male has become the homemaker and the woman is out earning the money. Like, we're inconsistent with what we're saying. So you leave a generation of males who are totally confused. Before it was simpler. They knew they were supposed to be the disciplinarian, the hero that saved the world whenever something went wrong. They were supposed to be the breadwinner. Mm-hmm. That was simple. And now we have all these expectations, but we still, as a society, honestly do not recognize the value of both genders. And it's not that males are better or females are better. We are different. And if we recognized it and used our differences to, raise each other up more, I don't think some of the problems that we have in society would still be as big problems. But we don't. We don't do that. And part of it is we are not aware. I do something in workshops that I picked up the idea on YouTube, and it just fascinates me. There is a picture, it is on YouTube, I can't remember what it's called, but you can see the whole experiment. But there is a portrait of this little, toddler age-ish child and dressed as a female. And the people who come in are asked, okay, what do you think her name might be? What do you think her personality? It's not said her, the child in the picture. The name, the personality, the hobbies, and what possible future occupation might be. And then they have a picture of what appears to be a male dressed in more masculine clothes, a toddler, same questions. And then afterwards, the people that answered the questions, they are shown both pictures and told it's the same person. It's the same child dressed up in different clothes. And it is mind-blowing. Like, it's kind of, people just kind of, what? because it is so, we don't recognize what we see a picture of a girl, it's like all this stuff is going through our heads. Oh yeah, it might be this, this, and this. We see the same picture, but we think it's a boy, and all of a sudden our expectation and perspective has totally changed.
Mm-hmm. There's so many things. I mean, even just parenting, we've talked about this, where there are so many more expectations about what dads should look like now and what they should be doing, but they didn't have those role models in their lives. But then also expected to do, you're right, just with the inconsistencies. And we still have the terms, boys will be boys. Well, what does that even mean, right? Like, we just have these things. I've seen so many different research studies. One, which was really powerful, I cry every time I see it, is they'll have a man in a public place, like a very busy public place, yelling. So there are two actors looking like they're a couple, and a man yelling at a woman. And how many people come up? All he's doing is yelling. He doesn't touch her, but is yelling. And all these people are coming up and swooping in to save the woman. Are you okay, ma'am? All of these, I'm going to cry just talking about it. But then they switch the roles, and she is physically aggressive, pushing him down, kicking him, hitting him, and nobody ever says anything. Some people just laugh, walk by and laugh. I don't know why I'm getting so emotional. Why I'm emotional. I cry all the time.
You should be emotional, but that is emotional. Like, think of, like, if that's reality, and it is reality, but I'm not discrediting that, there are terrible things that happen, but think about all the wonderful males who can't either stick up for themselves or just be authentic. If the, maybe that man, of course, like, I don't think you ever need to raise your voice anyway, but that's my, communication style. But it doesn't mean that he's a bad guy or he's going to end up, physically abusing her either. But that's where the assumption is immediately. But think about, what does that do to the males? Like, how restricted are they? If you had a man doing the same thing, if your husband's sitting next to you, Andrew, I knew it started with an A, Andrew. If you were telling the story and you broke down completely, and if your listeners were both watching, they see your wife crying and they're very sympathetic. They see you crying and then they think, he's a little bit weak, isn't he? A little bit wimpy.
Oh, I would be ridiculed. I would have
absolutely.
text messages from people that knew me personally. Absolutely. Yeah.
How sad is that?
It's interesting because it's, to your earlier point, it's almost, and not to over cliche it, but it's a no-win situation, because as a male, the restrictiveness and the lack of clarity puts, or it feels like a lot of times in my position, there's no right answer, right? In terms of, back to what you're talking about equality, if there are terms for everything where most of what men do, or men trying to interpret how to be supportive to their partners or to females in general, is now labeled as mansplaining, right? Is one term that's used as a negative. Well, I already know that. Why are you telling me that? Well, I'm not. I'm trying to be supportive. Well, you just don't need to mansplain it. Okay. So, but then the flip side of it is, well, why aren't you helping? Well, because there's no way I can help without getting in trouble, right? Like, we've talked about this in the past. As a guy, if I was ever driving down the road and saw a girl on the side of the road in distress, I would not stop. I feel bad, but I would keep going, because there is no situation in my mind where I come out of that positively, right? Because the presumption is it one of two things. Either she is trying to do something to, negative to me, or the perception is going to be, I'm trying to take advantage of that situation. Neither are true. But there's zero chance now. And so what lesson am I then teaching indirectly to my own girls, in that I'm not going to put myself in that position, right? I'm not going to put myself in a position ever. There's rules around how parents are to act at sports, and it's always directed at the men. It's not
Yep.
directed at the women,
Yep.
right? Like, we have two daughters that play sports. I don't want to be in the locker rooms, but it is immediate that there are restrictions placed on the men on how they behave, who they talk to, where they can go, where they can't go. Those same restrictions are not placed on women, and we've seen really bad things happen with women in that situation, but it's
Absolutely.
never treated the same. So,
Yeah.
all of that to say that it's tough because there is no right answer anymore, and it is a no-win situation in a lot of ways. Like, we're very lucky that I know Caroline supports me, but I also realize that I'm not entirely comfortable sharing my emotions most of the time, because there is a feeling of judgment or a negative connotation if I do overly. But then on the flip side, it's, well, why don't you share more? Well, because I don't feel that there's a place that I can do that, right? And it's not anything against her. Like, we
I'll
talk
make fun of you. No,
in
just kidding.
certain situations, that's fine, right? But it is, right? There is that back and forth. So it's really interesting, because how do you teach kids that, right? We have friends with little boys, and we have heard exactly what you've talked about, toughen up, walk it off. Why are you crying? You don't need to be upset. That's not how you do that. I've seen little girls beating up little boys, and a little boy just sitting there taking it because the parents got mad at them, even though they didn't start. Like, all the things you've touched on happen regularly, and there's an inconsistent model and lessons being taught.
So before we go into that piece,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, like, everything that you've been talking about, one of the critical parts is, I think, and especially coming up from the women's movement, is that as women, we communicate and expect communication from males in the same way we expect it from females. It's kind of like our way is the right way, and men are not doing it right. And if we understood better and respected the different styles of communication and catered to those, then our connections would be deeper. It's that our expectation is it's not respectful, in my opinion. Not just my opinion.
We did it. Well, no, we've done courses too. Just did when I was going through my training, we would have to do courses together. And I remember one of them was, women like to talk things out, and then they feel better, right? It's like, all this weight has lifted off whereas men feel more stressed out. And I don't want to generalize, because that's not going to be true for everyone, but certainly there are those things. So I think before we get into, how we can, enrich their emotional inner world and address some of these things, I think maybe just taking a step back, and we got to be aware of our biases in the first place, because you said it right from the start. We have these unconscious biases that we might not even be aware of. So I don't know if you have any tips for parents just to help raise that awareness, that sort of first step in the first place.
I've struggled with that because, and it's like you almost have to get parents interested in like if I put out something about behavioral problems or things like that with your little boys, I'll get a great reaction. And then when I have the parents to talk about those, because it's all connected, then I can bring in some information or activities that will turn on that light bulb about, there's something here, and I need to look a little bit deeper. If I had figured out how to get that one point out, how to get people interested, I wouldn't struggle so much. I wouldn't feel so frustrated, because anytime someone has become aware, it's like it changes everything, absolutely everything. You never look at gender the same, never. So it doesn't just improve your parenting, it improves your relationship with all the males in your world. So I would think there are parents, I'm sure there are parents, like you guys are, like I am, who constantly are searching for information. So then I think it's the responsibility of people like yourselves, like myself, to just keep putting the information out there. whether it's on social media or it's on courses or podcasts, or just keep putting it out, putting it out, putting it out. And somebody who is ready to hear and move in, that direction, they'll catch it, and that will be the start. I don't know what else to do besides that.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that I would have parents do is look at how they're interacting with their children. I think it's easier if they have a boy and a girl, just to be able to look. Oftentimes in the families that I work with, I see, them swooping in to protect the girl, but they're putting the girl in the victim mode continuously. Yeah. And they're not helping the boy with, they are always getting in trouble, but there's no support for them to learn how to regulate their emotions. And so they're always going to be the aggressor. So looking at those patterns of how we interact with our children and the things that we say about our children, right? Like if we are saying, oh, boys, right? And so it's just bringing awareness to some of those behaviors. I think could be really helpful for sure. Yeah.
I think sometimes if you're working with parents, especially if they have two children, it is the golden opportunity, because what often happens is that the mother will be trying to parent both children in the same way, in her way. And it's not landing with the little boys often. And so that's where it all starts. So if that parent, usually in frustration, reaches out for some support, then they start to understand, okay, the communication isn't the same. The effectiveness isn't the same. And so if you can adapt how you're speaking, how you're disciplining, you will have that connection that you'll be able to parent, with more harmony between, everybody in the family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you don't have a boy and a girl, then it's just looking at how you respond to them when they do come home, if they've gotten in trouble or if they come home crying or, whatever else is going on for them. It's just looking at those interactional patterns to begin with. So what can parents do to start improving the emotional inner world of their boys?
Well, the first thing is really awareness. So it's learning. You have to learn as much as you can. Some of the simple things, that people just want to grab something really quickly is there's something called, and I think it was Pollock again, that it's called the time silence syndrome. And when a little boy, or for my family anyway, doesn't matter what age the male is, when there's been some kind of an emotional experience, as a mom, my natural reaction is, I want to talk about it right now. As a female, I want to talk about it right now. I want to figure it out, and then we can let it go. But we cannot move forward with life until we sort this thing out, and it has to be done now. That works fine for, if I've got a little girl. Usually it does not work for the little boy, depending on the severity of that emotional trauma that he just went through, whether it's a big temper tantrum or something where he has felt shame or embarrassment. He needs time. And if we give our little boys that time and then let him approach you, or if you watch your little boy, you will see, sometimes you just see the whole body change, and you'll know that there's a possibility for conversation. And if you approach it in a way with real empathy and curiosity, then you can start to have a conversation. Anything that, if you don't give him that time though, he's going to probably put up more walls, more resistance. He's probably going to get either really, really angry, or he's going to shut down completely. Giving him that time to process those really strong emotions will give you an opportunity to have that conversation with him afterwards. Girls are sensitive to shame, but boys, it's like their world shatters if they've been embarrassed or ashamed. And when you think of how many times that happens when they're told, toughen up, that was a stupid thing to do. Oh, pick yourself. There's no need to be upset about that. Anything that causes embarrassment or shame will crush them, and they will shut down, and they need a little bit of time to pull themselves together inside to be able to have a conversation. Then when when there's that opportunity to have a conversation, and sometimes it's not right away. Like it might be at bedtime. It might be the next day in the car. It might be often if you're doing something with them. So you're out, cycling or hiking or doing something physical. Sometimes those conversations come out then. Often when as the mom, when we are talking to our sons, we have a tendency just to talk too much. We go on and on and on. And our boys, I think, sometimes just get overwhelmed with how much we're talking. And at a certain point, they'll just tune out. So if we can adjust to that and just, kind of get our point across, but we don't have to, go on so long about it. So if we talk a little bit more concisely and clearly, it will be, and it's not easier. Like I hear some people talk about this, and it makes me think, well, what, it's like a deficit. They can't talk as much, or they don't have the vocabulary. And it's not that. It's simply two different ways that we communicate well. And if we can recognize the differences and then make those adaptations, then we have a chance to really have great communication and really deep connection. For one more thing with communication, an easy one for parents. There's an example I give that's easier than just saying it. Okay, a mom has picked up her son after school, say 7, 8 years old. They come home, mom is in the kitchen, she's making dinner. Her son is maybe gone to his room, and he has gone back to building this, big thing with his Lego that's just an incredible project that he is totally focused on. Mom calls upstairs 5 minutes before dinner's ready, just says, almost time for dinner. That's it. 5 minutes later, she calls up, dinner's ready, come on down. No movement. She continues. She's still putting the last things, from the stove onto the plates, doing this, doing that, doing the other thing. She calls up another time, waits a few minutes, still nothing. She's starting to get, a little put out because she's also had a full, hard day. She's tired. She's put this meal on together. She's just asking him to come downstairs. So she calls up one more time, and she raises her voice considerably and just stands there waiting for him to kind of come down the stairs. He doesn't come down. She stomps up, stands in the middle of the door in the warrior pose there and says, look, you can't listen to me when I'm calling you, then that's it for this project, this Lego. That's it. You're done. And he turns around and he looks at her like a deer in the headlights. Like he is totally lost. He has no idea why his mom is so angry. If she understood the difference between males and females as far as focus, for one thing, women in general, like there's a spectrum, of course, but in general, we are really good at multitasking all the time, 1,000,001 things, and doing things quite well. In general, males are exceptional at single focus. And when they are tuned into something, there is no other world. The second part to that example is that there is a difference in, it's not just volume, it's also the pitch and the tone, but in language, the spoken language, and then also hearing. So there's two aspects there. But sometimes the female voice is not so easily caught by our little boys. Sometimes that's some of the issues that can happen in school, especially in the younger years. So you look at a little boy who is upstairs, so there's a distance. He is being called from his mother, who has a different level and tone and pitch, and he's up there total focused on what he is doing. If the mom, the first time he didn't respond, instead, with curiosity, went up to the room, made sure she had contact, like called his name, put his hand on his shoulder, something where she knew they were having, contact. And if she said to him, "It's dinner time, come on downstairs," he probably would just turn and go. "I'm hungry, let's go." So what parents can do before they, get in a rage, step in a few steps before that. Make contact and say, "Did you hear me?" 9 times out of 10, that little guy will say, "No, mommy, what did you want?" So it's such an easy thing to do, but it's magical. When you catch yourself feeling annoyed because he is deliberately not listening to you, ask him, "Did you hear me?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Simple. But
You got to do that with me.
yeah, you're usually the one calling me.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, this is wonderful. Any other last tidbits that you think is really important to share before we sign off?
I think with everybody, something that has guided me well is keeping in the front of my mind all the time, they're doing the best they can at that particular moment. And if they're not doing well in whatever that means, it means they're not capable of doing it at that point. So if we give them that understanding and empathy and think, okay, this is not the way I want it, but it's the best they can do right now, and that's good enough. It makes a difference.
It really does. I think I'm saying that all the time. Kids do well when they can. And if they're not doing well, it's because, there's something beyond their capacity right now. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Well, wonderful. So much to think about. And I think not even just for our little boys, just the men in our world too. I mean, just this week alone, I've had, in the past 3 days, I've had just as many conversations with different men saying, I don't feel like I can ever say anything anymore, right? Like I can just, because I'm going to get in trouble or someone, and so I think this is a really important topic that we continue to talk about and continue to learn more about and read about. So I really appreciate having you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
And I'm going to put all of your contact information in the show notes. And it looks like I've got some pillars and challenges and things that you've offered us for the listeners, which is fantastic. Where, maybe just for the listeners, where would the best place be to find you?
I think the website is the best place, Sonhood Coaching. That will also take you to any of the social media. I'm on everything you're supposed to be on.
Yeah.
But the website is kind of where you'll find everything.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Can we actually do a debrief?
Yeah, we can do a debrief.
Because I'm just curious, like your thoughts on all of this, just to being on the other side. I mean, you shared a little bit, but just, your experiences, if there's anything growing up, whether it's a specific experience that you remember, being told suck it up, or just societal influences that have you picked up through osmosis. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't think of any one thing that comes to mind as a turning point. I'm sure there was, but yeah, there's definitely, I know, and I catch myself from time to time absolutely not feeling like there's an opportunity or a safety to really expressing what I'm thinking or feeling or anything, because it to her point, it is judged, whether it's intended to be or not. As a middle-aged white dude, we've talked about it before. This isn't an oh woe is me, but it's a very interesting demographic to be a part of, because it's not one that is necessarily supported in the same way. It's looked upon with derision. It's looked upon, for the most part, as a negative. It's looked upon as someone that's had everything given to them and they only take. And so, one of the things that I alluded to is there's no instruction manual on how to try and modify that, right? And when it is something that you try to change or something that you try to do differently, there's almost like an aha gotcha to that. And so you do. The safest thing to do is just, I keep my mouth shut. I go about my business. My mode of trying to avoid any sort of negative conflict or anything is just put my head down, do what I think I can to help, and move on. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that is picked up through societal things, right? Like it's even worse now. I find it's you're inundated now. And part of the reason that I left social media and I left pretty much my entire online life is because there was nothing in it for me that helped me lead a better life. It was people that I considered to be fake, presenting, not that the person themselves is fake, but what they were presenting online being fake, and the life they were living was more aspiration than reality. And we've lost the ability, this is more of a general rant, but we've lost the ability for open back and forth discourse, everything, be it ethnicity, religion, gender. There is no nuance to the conversation. You're either with me or you're against me. And so, to bring it back to the conversation, that's not new to me, right? Like, as a guy, that's kind of the mode I've been living in for a long time. And, I did mention on it, like, professionally, yeah, it still happens to this day. Nothing annoys me worse than when I make a comment and I become a slightly more animated and someone tells me to calm down and relax, right? Because I see people behaving incredibly more animated, more negative, more whatever, and they're not told. People are given a wide berth, and it's this weird kind of, not double standard, but just a lack of consistency, really. Yeah. And it's not about, to her earlier points about equality. It's not about equality, right? What is being pursued by many large groups is not equality; it's retribution, right? And so, for there to be retribution, someone has to give something up and admit fault, and that's the position that, for the most part, and this isn't just a middle-aged white guy comment, men have taken on that role, because you said it yourself, right? The expectations on us are greater. We have to be available for all things family related, but at the same time, our work commitments remain the same, and the expectation of being a provider remains the same, and the expectation of being pink jobs, blue jobs hasn't changed, right? Except there's a lot more blue jobs, right? So, and I don't think any of that's intentional. I don't think any of that is someone trying to overtly be, mean or anything like that. But, you hear guys get frustrated all the time that if I went out and had a parade about being a white male, I'd be lynched. I'd be right. And they're not wrong. It's not absolutely not the right way to go about making a point. But there are so many things that are celebrated that, again, it's great to support it, but it feels like there's a at the expense of, and we do see it at an early age for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting because she raised a really interesting point of, how do you as a parent get that awareness? Right? How do you have that aha moment where you become more attuned to what you want to do? And I think the only thing I was thinking of what you're saying is you have to very clearly understand what it is, how the type of person you want to raise, regardless of gender, and then modify as necessary as you see your actions or your unknown biases impacting that. Yeah. Right.
And with the emotional piece, I think really validating and normalizing, like, I think a lot of work needs to be done. I mean, that's my focus. That's my area of expertise, is looking at all of that and resilience and things, but really working on that with our boys and our girls. and our non-binary, like with just all children need to be able to work on that and know that all emotions are important and expressing them is important and being with them. And, like, I think all of that is really so important for everybody. But there is like, even in certain roles, I find like everybody by now should know I'm a crybaby. I mean, I cried when, I found out Sean Connery died.
Sure did.
I cried everything. But it's funny because in certain roles, I remember teaching and I was telling a very personal story about a kiddo that I was working with. It's a very sad story. I won't say it now, but I did cry. Like I do here. I'm not bawling inconsolably, right? I just get a little teary-eyed. And the class totally, like in the feedback, was just saying that I was messed up, that I need like emotionally unstable, that I need help because and they even said, Caroline shared this story and cried in class, right? It needs all this help. And I'm like, it was a really sad story with a kid that I was working with who died by suicide. How do you not, but I think in any other place, people would see me as human and vulnerable, but in that role, people saw me as unstable, right? And it's just,
there's definitely that double standard too, right?
And we forget that humanness, but I think that for me, that was just like, wow, this is probably what it's like for a lot of males regularly, right? That was just one instance for me. And anywhere else in my world, it might be acceptable. But I think for a lot of boys and males, like that's just an everyday sort of occurrence.
Yeah, it is. I think though it's an everyday occurrence a lot for women too, because women that display emotion in what is deemed to be a professional setting are judged far more harshly than in normal, right? And I think that's why you get the feedback you got is you're an expert, you're leading a class, you're a professional and you're a leader in your industry. Why am I watching you cry? Right. So in that context, that's unfair to you because there is a human component to it that's ignored. I don't know that I would have been seen any better in that situation just because of the construct of the interaction with the group, right? Had I been a person in the class telling that story, getting emotional, guaranteed no one says anything. Right. So I think there's that part of it. And I think to your earlier point, one of the things is you're right. It's important to have those conversations and teach kids about emotions and that they're okay and everything. But there's a secondary component to that, which is so while teaching boys that it's okay and that it's okay to express yourself, it's important. It's equally as important to teach girls how to see it as a positive thing as well. Because it's great if you're telling your kid it's okay to cry. It's not great if you're telling his sister that, that shouldn't be the behavior, or you're implying that through other actions, right? So you got to make sure you're balancing it out as well, that there's a give and take to it for sure. And that I think for parents of daughters like us, right, we don't have the ability to show them both, but we can teach our daughters, if you encounter this is okay, and this is the reason, and this is how you would support it, and whatever. Just like if we were parents of just boys, we could have that conversation and explain to them from their perspective.
And of course, I always talk about modeling, showing our own vulnerability and our own emotions and expressing that, not just, behind closed doors or whatever. So you can cry a little more. Actually, you were upset the other day about something. I can't remember what it was.
I wasn't crying though, but I was.
Yeah, it was something. What was it about?
I don't know. Probably a hockey game.
I can't even remember, but I don't think I'd seen you as upset in years.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because the girls have asked that too, right? Like I remember having conversations with Willow where she's asked me, "Have you cried?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I have." She's like, "Well, when?" And I had to think about it. I'm like, legit, like not just upset and frustrated sort of thing. I don't know, right? And so it was interesting. And when I explained to her when it was, and it was when my father passed away, and I was explaining it to her, she was fascinated to think that I could, right? It was really funny because I don't know that she thought that I had the ability. Like it's like there's switches that daddy just doesn't come with that switch flicked on, right? And a lot of that it was interesting because it did make me realize that, yeah, I'm pretty stoic a lot of the times. And I never was as a kid. I was very outgoing and animated. And to your earlier question, as I think about it, that's gone. It's rare that I will be animated and feel comfortable enough to be goofy and joke around and, be silly or show any sort of emotion other than because of the perception and the response that it gets, right?
So something has trickled down in your
100%.
narrative,
Oh,
right?
100%,
to
yeah.
see that shift.
Yeah.
But lots to think about.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Alrighty. Good day.
Later.